I've got my frosty beverage in a circus cup today.
Nice. Yeah, I decided to go with the iced coffee. It's getting
It's
a
a
little
cup.
warm here. It's been raining for like days.
Oh, has it? No, we had snow and now it's back to
I
70.
know. I heard it was like 100 degrees one day and snowing the next, man.
Yeah, it's been
Wow.
absolute riot over here. So good times. All right, you guys, welcome to today's Eat and Greet. I'm so excited to have you guys here. And we've got Mr. Gary Caton back in the saddle.
Hey, y'all.
Yes,
Be
I know.
here.
And it's so great because people are like, I love Gary. I'm like,
Oh, yay. Thank you. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. I always have a great time talking to you, Stormy. It's always fun, and you're a great hostess, so I'm happy to be here again.
and we're wearing our nod to Mars
Yeah,
reds today.
Tuesday. Yeah, red time. Arr.
Yeah. So
I
I was
put my
feeling really
red
pumped
face on,
about
but I'm afraid nobody would like me anymore.
it. Well, we were laughing because if you go outside and just peek to the sky now, man, Mars is doing it.
In
So
the evening.
bright.
Yeah, yeah. Just look to the east, and it's like it's before midnight even now that he's coming up, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, just super bright.
So
Really.
nod to Mars in the red on a Tuesday. That's
Yes.
wrong. So
Hail the red one.
so today though, we're gonna actually not talk about Mars except for as he's kind of influencing, but we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
Mercury retrograde.
Yes.
That's our thing.
This cat right here.
Yes. My goodness. Since we have started doing the retrogrades together, I've been looking more at pictures and watching the loops and does it cross
Nice.
the ecliptic or it doesn't cross the ecliptic, tying these things back. So it's been
Oh
such
my
a joy to have
goodness.
you.
Are you kidding me? Oh wow. My heart my heart is fluttering. It's like, wow, somebody gets it. I'm not the only weirdo.
No, not at all. And because I've been embracing so much of the Mercury and Venus in my chart this year, I have been going through videos and books of Hermes, of
Mhm.
Thoth, of all of the ways Mercury shows up. So I'm
Nice.
feeling like, let's talk Mercury.
Let's
So
bring him in here.
yeah, so all right, guys. So Mercury retrogrades just like all the time. I feel like, I'm like, oh, is it Mercury retrograde? It's like exciting to find a time when it's not sometimes. So Mercury is going to go retrograde again this year, October 14th, and this is going to be at 11 degrees of Scorpio. We'll experience this retrograde all the way until November 3rd, where he's actually going to come out of retrograde at 25 degrees of Libra. So we're approaching actually shadow.
Yeah, Mercury enters Scorpio on the 27th,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
finally of September, and finally leaves Scorpio on December 1st.
Yeah.
So that's a long time, right? And it's like, wow, okay. Usually when you hear about people talk about outer planets, you say, oh, they stay in one place for so long, that sign is accentuated in the collective and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's a long time for Mercury to stay in one sign, man. And
Yeah.
in fact, if you add up all the time Mercury's in the water signs this year, it's like as much as all the other signs combined. So yeah, it's a big deal to pay attention to, because if you think about it, 3 retrogrades per year, 3 water signs, those 3 signs, those 3 houses in your chart, you're going to have special attention be paid right there, right? Um, so yeah, it's definitely a big deal, and this one is special. Yeah, for a few different reasons. This one really, I think that you can really, because Mercury crosses right by the sun, like almost right into the heart of the sun. I feel like it's a way of really getting, and it's in Scorpio, right? So there's this penetrating quality of emotional clarity of like, this is who I am, this is my truth, and like all the bullshit you can just like be like,
Yeah.
you know. Um, So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see that this is hitting the same points as that Venus in 2018. So this is pretty significant for bringing clarity to even things when you look at them in the bigger cycles.
Long term, yeah.
Yeah. So this is
I love
kind
it.
of neat. I see, I've been doing some work, Gary. You don't just come over and hang out. I actually learn. I'm like, oh, I
That's so
gotta
awesome. I'm
see
so
that.
happy to hear it. You
And
know, it's a
cool, you're doing
blessing.
it too.
Yeah, it's a blessing to know that you know, that this stuff that's coming through me is now coming through you, and it's going to come through more people, and it's like, oh my God, that's the thing, like,
Yeah.
to pass it on and to spread it far and wide. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? So
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Yeah,
That's the good stuff.
right on.
So let's talk about that for just a minute. If you're taking it back long term and looking at 2018, and we've got Venus in her retrograde at this time. So it's like, take yourself back to what was happening at, what is that, 10 degrees, 11 degrees of Venus at that time in her retrograde. What was happening? What was going on for you in your love life, your money, your values? I think that really values seems to be such a big word for me
Yeah,
at that time.
especially with Venus. Yeah. Yeah, because if you think about Venus, you know, it's really simple, man. It's just like that stuff that you just feel sort of magnetically drawn to, you know? It's like, that feels good. I like that. That's beautiful. That's something that I dig, you know? And that's where our values come from, really, you know? Like, of course there's sort of like, that would be more like the Taurus Venus, right? It just feels good. The Libra Venus would be more about, like, you know, social values, and what maybe there's a little more mental quality to some of our values are formed because, hey, it may not be exactly what I prefer, but it's what's best for the collective, right? So
Sure.
there's those values too. Um, but yeah, Venus, Venus oftentimes is, yeah, really, it's about values, and you know, those change, right?
That was change. We change. You come into
Absolutely.
a different lunar phase. You come into whatever else gets stimulated in your chart. And there is a veritable amount of change that
Yeah.
becomes
And
of
if I'm
intention.
hanging out with you and you have certain values and you're like, man, Gary, check this out. I'm really hip on this. And I go, wow. And I'm really listening. I go, wow. And that hits me. And now that's part of my values, right? And the same thing you were saying, go another way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, checking out what was going on in 2018, and kind of, you know, really like checking in with what you were feeling and what you were drawn to, maybe what you were reacting to, because what I have noticed lately is there's a lot of reactions, you know. And um I had this insight that, you know, where I was thinking to myself that I was keeping it real, right? I was like, but what I was really doing is I was just reacting without a filter. In other words, I was just like, "Bleh," you know, just whatever first reaction I had, I was just letting it fly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I mean, different people have different ideas about what keeping it real is, but I don't know that that's actually the way I want to keep it real, you know, because that's just a reaction. That's not even necessarily me, you know. And so I started thinking about, like, if I can hold off on those reactions and just like get back to and remember who I am
Mm-hmm.
and remember my values and then come from there, then not only am I not going to be reacting, and so there's not going to be this sort of like this bounce of energy coming, you know, which is going to tend to bounce off wherever, you know, like, but it's going to be like more centered and more true and more along with my essential nature.
Yeah.
You know
I
what
think
I'm
about
saying?
that scene in Moana, right? That's very much that Venus in Scorpio, where it's like, okay, even here I can go back and look at where am I hurt? Where am I afraid? Where was whatever happening? But in that scene at the end, when she touches her, have you seen Moana before I get
I
all
don't
into
think
this?
so. Is it a
Okay,
Disney
now,
thing?
yes, now you can go watch this
Okay.
scene and look for it on YouTube. But
Okay.
she's, you know what, essentially what happens is somebody steals the heart of Tafiti, and she is giving life to all of the land, right?
Oh,
She's
wow.
essentially Mother Earth, and her heart is stolen. Venus retrograde Scorpio, my heart is
Oh,
stolen, right?
man.
The greatest pain. And so what happens is that she starts to take from the land and becomes a volcano, essentially. And so Moana goes on this great journey to return the heart of Tafiti. And she comes to her and calls her to her, and she comes barreling at her in this lava, just ready to destroy this little girl. And she gets face to face with her and touches her and says, "You know who you are." Ooh, I got chills. And it is that. And Tafiti closes her eyes, and the heart is returned, and she begins to get back to the land. Like, even before the heart is returned, in the lava of it, she's remembering, this isn't who I am. This is a thing
Yes.
that happened.
Oh my God, that's
Oh,
beautiful.
you gotta
Wow.
look it up. It's so profound.
Yeah.
I get chills every time. Like, I start crying about it. It's so beautiful, because if you haven't been there, if you haven't been kicked in your teeth like that, keep coming back.
Yeah. So yeah, the first thing we want to do when we're going back to 2018 is think about, am I still reacting
Mm,
to stuff that maybe was a hard deal? That might have been a hard time for me, right? Did I ever remember who I was regarding that? Or am I still reacting to that?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, I mean, I was really surprised. If you go back Venus 8 years ago, right? The same thing is true. Like, we're now in the Venus cycle that came around in 2012,
Mhm.
and there's a particular relationship for me that was difficult in that year, and I've been interacting with that person again this year, and I'm noticing, like, wow, um, yeah, like, I see things much more clearly now, and I've remembered who I am, and I don't have those reactions, and it's like, wow, like, it's really, really revealing, and it makes it so much easier to be a friend, and to be um, and to have good values, and not have this unnecessary friction that comes from reacting all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, not to beat it to death, but I do think that too, in the energy of Scorpio, we were able to look at where my power is struggling to get my needs met, or to
Right.
have my heart met. And that's not just romantic heart, but in the heart of hearts, where am I still power struggling with this planet to do the thing that I love, to say the thing I love, to show up in a way that I love. So all of my resources.
Oh yeah, and that's nothing against Scorpios. I mean, Scorpios are some
No.
powerful people. My sister is a Scorpio, and you know what? You know what my nephews say about her? They say the Aunt Reenie train is coming, and you got to either get on, get off, or get run over.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. Yeah, no shade to Scorpios at all. Y'all are living your best life. We need that energy for sure. And then we take Mercury and retrograde that bad boy in Scorpio. We're going to answer some questions. Okay?
Yes.
We're going to answer some questions. And Scorpios are brilliant observers. They are brilliant. They have such good analytical skills as well, to like take something, break it down to the root of the situation, and suss
Hmm.
out what's in there. I mean, to hell and back. That
Yeah.
is a beautiful vibe to carry. And Mercury's nosy enough to go along with it. I just love that. He's like, yeah, I totally want to know. I don't want any drama. I just want 1,000% of the details.
Right.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
Mercury energy. Plus, Mercury could go to hell and back. So
Absolutely. He's
it's
the
a,
one God that can go literally
yeah,
to
so it's
the
a good
underworld.
vibe. It's a good vibe in Scorpio.
Yeah, there's a real ability to get right to the heart of something, and to really fully, like, see it for what it is. And I think that that's the gift of this retrograde, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What other insights do you have? I feel like I'll like hostage us and we'll stay on Venus. Like, you can tell I love Venus. I'm like,
Well, the other thing about water signs, I mean, just to remember in general, just to get back to our basics, you know, the alchemical symbol for water is a downward pointing triangle, right? So all the cool stuff about water is down and in. And so, as I said, if you're just acting or reacting, you might miss, you're just seeing the surface, right? And remember, the surface of water is like a mirror. So whatever you're reacting to, it might be like your own reflection.
Sure. I spotted,
Might
I got it.
and so but if we can get on our snorkel goggles and get down and look under the water, then we see all this cool stuff, all the fish and all the, you know, the kelp and all the cool stuff that's going on. It's like, whoa, there's so much more going on down there than I actually realized. So, you know, that idea that water is, it's cool. So to lower your energy and to go within and really just, and notice things like, for instance, notice people's body language. You know, if somebody's saying that they're hip with something, but they're kind of like pulling back, and they might even be shaking their head like this while they're saying, yeah, I can do that, when they're going like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Okay. Yeah.
mixed messages. Mixed messages. Maybe you know, I mean, call me an Aries, but maybe just don't do it for me. You know, maybe it's like, okay, I'll see, you know, I'll check you later. Like when your maybe's a yes, talk to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I feel like I need out of time or two over here.
And so, watching people's body language, listening to what people are not saying. You know, because a lot of times people will avoid certain things, and that's telling you more about what's going on than what they're actually, you know, they're saying all the right stuff, but there's one thing they're not talking about, and it's like, oh, okay, like that. Well, what about that?
What about that? Well, and Scorpio's going to ask, right? Mercury and Scorpio is going to be like, well, so what about that? Right? So there's going to be definitely that conversation. But as Mercury moves into Scorpio here on the 27th, well, you can start to take a little bit of note of what you might be beginning to have a pretty immediate conversation about as Mercury heads into this retrograde. And I think really, I have the sense that we can watch at the equinox on the 22nd as the sun moves into Libra. We can even start to pay a bit of attention there because it might be a nice long strain of things that come through that Libra Scorpio energy, even as the sun lights it up, even though it's not necessarily Mercury, but Mercury's already been there. Mercury is wrapped up here at the Virgo new moon with Jupiter trying to make this big ass plan that's like, hey, that's a little bit too big. So there's a sweet conversation, I think, available, but there's a revelation of information for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I have definitely worked with. What's really fascinating is that, you know, there's this mystical document that's associated with Hermetic teachings, and it is the source of the saying a lot of people are aware of, as above, so below. But it says so much more than that. What it actually says, and this is just one part of what it says, is that which is above corresponds to that which is below, and that which is below corresponds to that which is above in order to accomplish the miracles of the one. And what's fascinating about that is that I found that Mercury makes an alignment above the horizon of what's called greatest elongation while it's visible. And then it makes an alignment invisible with the sun, conjunct the sun. And then it makes an alignment above the horizon again in direct motion in the morning sky. And all three of these happen in the same degrees. And so that which is above corresponds to that which is below, and that which is below corresponds to that which is above. It's literally true in the sky. And like you said, right after Mercury goes into Scorpio, when it reaches that maximum elongation, that's the chance to tune in to what's going on in, you know, potentially in that retrograde period. you can sort of get advance warning of what you might be dealing with, and you can sort of prepare. And in my book, I actually talk about some exercises that people can do, because in alchemy, transformation happens in three stages, three basic stages, right? There's what's known as the blackening stage, where things sort of are darkening or becoming, really it's about things becoming stale or stagnant, and before they can be transformed. So so noticing like whatever's not working before it becomes a big problem, because usually if you're paying attention, right? Let's just say, like, I don't know, there's something that, technical, a lot of people always blame, oh my God, Mercury retrograde and blank went wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of the time when something goes wrong, it acted a little funny before it went all the way bad, right?
Right. Like wheels didn't just fall off.
Yeah, exactly. Although that's usually the way we tell the story, right? Because we don't want to admit that we weren't paying attention.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're paying attention, you notice something's a little off. Like, wow, that feels, or something feels weird, and it's like, wow, what's that about? And if you start paying attention and asking questions, you can kind of and you can even do rituals. One of the things that I recommend is what the Native Americans call a potlatch. It's a giveaway. It's so by giving away, whether it be your time, or or goods or whatever, by letting go of something, you're freeing up space, energy in your system for new energy to come in. And that's what the Mercury retrograde is about, because it's the beginning, it's the ending of one cycle, and it's the new beginning of another. And it's that process of transitioning from one to the other. And so if you're willing to, if you just say, okay, I know a new cycle's coming, here, I'm just going to say, boom, I'm just going to clear some space for that news. Right. Wow. Right away. You're way ahead of the game. Right.
Yeah.
So there's the giveaway. You might practice fasting, and that doesn't necessarily have to mean like not eating. Right. Because, I'm not a doctor and I'm not recommending that for anybody, but I mean, it's a valid spiritual practice if you know what you're doing, of course. But you might try fasting from certain from certain words or certain actions or certain activities. There's some days where I'm like, I am not doing email today,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not doing social media today, or today is just, stuff like that, and you can try fasting from certain things. And let's see, I'm trying to remember what the other thing that I recommend for that is. So there's the giveaway, and there's the fasting, and then well, I can just pick up the book and look in there, right?
You're like, I literally own this book I wrote, it turns out. Let's look inside of there. But either way, any one of these things is a space of some pretty nice clarity, spatial, spiritual, emotional, mental clarity gets pushed around, and can invite that new energy in for sure. If you guys can see on the other side of this curtain in my hallway, I just have a pile of clothes. I'm just going through things, and I'm like,
you know what I'm saying? That's it. Could be as simple as that, like pull a Marie Kondo, right?
Marie Kondoing, Taurus style for sure. I'm like, well, that's still beautiful though.
Yeah, and you see that right there, that's still beautiful. I still feel connected, or meh, and if it's meh, what do you need meh for?
Yeah, we
Let
don't.
it go, man. Exactly.
This is Virgo season.
But if it's like, no, that's still beautiful, then you're reconnecting with that thing, and now that's also a renewal of sorts, right? Because you're like, oh, I forgot, I love that thing, and now I remember. The other thing is just like, contemplation, meditation, journaling, stuff like that. Whether, you know, it's really interesting, you know, when Freud and Carl Jung and all these cats were starting, you know, modern psychology as we know it, they, you know, the psychotherapy got the moniker the talking cure, right? Like talking about your problems. And it's interesting because, I mean, you know, it really isn't a new thing. I mean, Christians have been going to confessional for ages, right? And so it's like, it's unburdening of, but what they found is that you don't have to even, you don't even have to talk to anybody else. I mean, you can go full on Scorpio style and just like your own private thoughts in a notebook, but it's still that process of writing to yourself. There's an unburdening that happens with that. And it frees up energy, and it can be really creative kind of thing to do. So if you get ahead of the game, when Mercury does these, you know, these alignments, these triple alignments, and you start the process before it goes retrograde, you're going to be like, you know, a couple steps ahead, and you're going to have that free, your energy is going to be freed up. You're going to be paying attention, so that when things do, if things do get a little bit, you know, you're going to be like, okay, you're going to be less likely to come from that reactive place and be more able to respond productively, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, during this Mercury retrograde, so it's going to start in Scorpio and then back up into this Libra energy. So it kind of has this neat double feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm all deep and going over the depths of my soul here, and then I back out, and it's like, well, hold on, let's just be balanced. Let's say maybe we can see it from all directions, which is interesting because I think then as Mercury heads back on the road in direct fashion, Scorpio's going to be like, it was crap, let it go. We don't need to see this from 100 perspectives. Let's do this. You know, it becomes a bit more decisive in that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's definitely the biggest difference between Libras and Scorpios. Are way more decisive. You know, the being Mars ruled. The beauty of Libra is that they are able to see both sides almost always. But at the same time, you know, there gets to be a lot of fence sitting and whatever. And Scorpio's like, nah, man. You know, this is, and so. But one thing I noticed is that Mercury stations in its own bounds in Scorpio.
Okay.
And now this is very interesting to me because is it okay to toot my own horn a little bit?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're here.
I mean, you know, I understand too much of that's not cool, but sometimes it's like, ain't nobody else going to toot it if I don't.
I think we believe about that here.
Because I wrote about the retrograde earlier this year in Cancer, and I wrote about it in its own bounds. That most of the retrograde was happening in Mercury's bounds, and I said we should read this as a mandate. Well, first of all, when planets are in their own bounds, they have the power of autonomy, and they can define the terms, limits, and rules of engagement. So I said, we should read this, the fact that Mercury is stationing in its own bounds, as a mandate to challenge the conventional rules, terms, or limits at some point during this retrograde. Not only are rules made to be broken and often have exceptions, but they also need to be changed and updated from time to time. As new information becomes available, the old rules are subsumed by new ones, and this is one of those times. And I just thought, like, that was something that I was hoping was true, and I'm so glad to see that it was true in some important ways. You know, like, you know, that was at the point in time where, like, you know, defunding the police was actually on the table as a real thing to do. You know, in over here in near, not my hometown, but the nearest city in Asheville, North Carolina, they passed a measure for reparations for Black folks. you know, and I was just like, oh my God, wow. I mean, that they were the first city to do that as far as I know. So you talk about like old, like making up for the past, owning the past, and then trying to do something positive about it. Then that's what retrogrades are all about.
Mhm.
And changing the rules. Like we don't have to do it the way it's always been done. We can change it, right? I mean, what that's the positive side of retrogrades,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So I would say the same thing is true. The fact that Mercury's stationing in its own bounds is calling to attention. Hey, you know, you might be fighting a battle on terms that is set up for you to lose.
Right.
You've been set up, you know, and if you keep fighting that battle on someone else's terms, you don't really have a chance of winning.
Mm.
So really the battle is about, hey, I'm not going to fight that battle under those rules. If you want to talk about doing this, let's talk about the terms under which we'll do it. And if we can adjust those, then I'll do it. If we can't, no thanks.
Sure. Sure. Well, and that the revision here, I think at a personal level for each of us kinds of puts us in the challenge of our own rules, right? Like what rules have I
Absolutely.
set that are
Yeah,
like,
you might have set up a boundary. I mean,
ah,
this is one thing that I've always been careful about, or I've learned to be careful about. Watch your nevers.
nevers and always.
Oh my goodness, nevers and always. You know, and you notice how it always, you know,
See, it's inevitable. As soon as you
you
say
notice
it,
how most of the time the always is you. You
yeah.
always,
Oh,
and the never is me. I never, blah, 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 blah. Well, sometimes it's you never, right? But I will never do blank, 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 right? And then the next thing you know, you find yourself in a situation where you're doing that thing you said you were.
blank, blank, blank is on the table.
Oh my goodness, man.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, it'll be an interesting time too, I think, because this retrograde has this connection a few times with Saturn,
yes,
you know,
yes, yes, yes. Oh, yes.
and that's going to
Yeah.
be really, I think, critical because, again, in that idea of where have I set my own authoritarian bounds? Where have I done that? And it's really, I think that when Mercury and Saturn square in the first place, it becomes really personal work, right? Because it's kind of like, please be by yourself and work on this. Please do this on your own for a minute because you need to think. You need to think about what's happening
Plan.
right in front of us. Think,
Yeah.
plan, strategize. How do we move this thing forward? Right? All of that good stuff. And then we have opposition with Uranus.
Yeah, that's
And,
right. That's
and
right.
so
Yep.
it's like the busy mind, my busy mind meets, please be on your own because we've got to think about what's going on. So that's an interesting place to be doing work from.
Yep. Yep. And you know, the squares happen while Mercury's in Libra,
Mhm.
the squares to Saturn, and the oppositions happen while Mercury's in Scorpio, oppositions to Uranus, right? So there, and now get this, couple things going on here. You talked about the past. Oh, this is pointing to the future because two things. Mercury's going to station in the air signs. Mercury didn't do that last year. Mercury went retrograde and direct in the water signs. The fact that it's stationing in the air signs is a presaging the fact that next year it's going to be the air signs that gets all the action.
Right.
Mercury spends more time than all the other elements. So you're getting a glimpse of the future that way. And also you're getting a glimpse of the future because Saturn and Uranus are going to be doing this next year.
Yeah, those two are coming for each other, which is always interesting. I mean, looking back through history, we make some pretty significant changes when those two bump up against each other. And I really love that, like seeing the currencies of other cultures, how they've changed at those times. I'm like, man, and we're right on the cusp of that conversation, anyways. And
Yeah.
Uranus Taurus has got that primed. The pump is primed,
The
right? So at a
pump is
social level,
definitely
we're
prime.
rethinking, and oh, yeah, we're rethinking it for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting. Mercury in Libra is in Saturn's sign of exaltation, right?
Yeah.
Saturn is exalted in Libra. So another way of saying that is Saturn is the exaltation lord of Mercury when Mercury's in Libra. So Mercury is aspecting one of its rulers. This is known as reception. When a planet is aspecting another planet and that planet owns that piece of territory through which the planet is passing, it's sort of like you're in a conversation with your landlord. It's not just anybody that you're doing the square with. This is the person that, now, since Saturn is exalted in, that's generally thought to be a positive thing to some degree because Saturn's happy in Libra. And so Mercury's in Saturn's happy place. So Saturn says, hey, oh, you're going to my happy place, even though this is a square and there's some difficulty. I know all the tricks about my happy place because that's my happy place. And let me help you to make this difficult thing a little easier. And so the idea is that when there's reception, a square becomes a little more like a sextile.
Yeah,
it's a little bit easier to get something productive to happen out of it, a little less likely to be like, serious disagreements and stuff like that can come from the squares.
Now, are sound effects included? Happens.
They can be.
There's no sound effects. I don't want the aspect. No thanks. Brilliant. Okay, so I think too, when we talk about it, like being in reception and kind of having a friendliness in order there, I teach that the squares are the 911. So they're going to put us under a lot of pressure in that box so that we will take an action to get out of the box. So do you feel like this is going to be just an actual action?
Well, think about it for a second, right? If I'm Mercury and I'm like going through and I'm like, ruh-roh, we got a difficulty here, and it's a pretty serious, like I can't blow this one off.
Right.
If I blow this one off, something might break. I might be liable in some way, or I might have broken the law somehow, or blah, blah, blah. Like, I better ask, permission before I go any further, right? First of all, that would be a smart thing to do, when Mercury squares Saturn, because, Saturn's all about like, hey, if you put in the work and if you do things according to the way they're supposed to be done, I'm going to give you the rewards. No problem. But if you try to get around and be sneaky and like don't put in the work, I'm gonna send you back to do it over, right? Sure. So you're dealing with Saturn. So right away, my bad. Hey, Saturn, I think I might have messed up here. What do you want me to do? And Saturn says, you know what? A lot of people end up doing that, and we've got to work around. So it's cool. Thanks for letting me know. It's the kind of thing where if you own it and you just, and you go through and you do what you're supposed to do, it'll probably be all right. You know what I'm saying? But if you try to get sneaky and be like, no, blee, 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 blah, 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 woo, no, probably not going to work out so good.
It's not going to be for your greatest good.
The Saturn's going to be like, oh, really? Well, I just happen to have a camera. That's my property. I just happen to have a camera over there. And it's funny because what you said, that ain't at all what the camera showed me.
Right. And it's interesting because at their first little meetup here, just after the equinox, we come into the space of thinking about where we've been in relation to things. Mercury is not direct yet, but Saturn is. So Saturn's got those eyes on the past for sure. And he's like, you see what you did here? We cannot pretend like you don't see it. Right? You see what's happening here.
Right.
So it's kind of nice. So it's like as little things, as we're getting going and little things start to come up, don't give it a brush off, because it might actually be asking for
if it's something that deserves, to be taken seriously, take it seriously, but don't overreact. Just be like, okay, there might be a situation here. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. Right. and it might be like not a big deal, but you can't assume that, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
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 So,
All right, man.
but yeah, so the 3 squares with Saturn, you know, that's the one good thing about that, is that he's got some reception there. And Saturn's dignified in Capricorn, you know, and Saturn's past, you know, Pluto now. Saturn's, you know, Saturn, man, the last year and this year, Saturn was with the South Node and then with Pluto. I mean, Saturn in Capricorn was not a fun time.
It was just very serious. He's like
Oh,
just coming along, raising the vibration and everybody's maturity. You know, it's a rough go. It's rough to grow spiritually. You just don't just sit down and meditate and vibrate yourself to a new existence. You
no,
gotta work for it.
you got to work for it. But now Saturn's past a lot of that stuff. I mean, Saturn in Capricorn is dignified, and so it has the ability to help. And really, like, this is the part. There's actually some. I was looking earlier. There's actually some dates later in the year that qualified to make Saturn talismans if you want. Like the stuff that was like, I don't want to invite that into my life is mostly gone, and we can actually. What I'm saying is we can connect with the positive aspects of Saturn and Capricorn more easily now.
Sure. Well, and
Which
I
is,
think oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yeah.
After he blows through, right? It's like Saturn comes in, especially in that first year. It is usually rough because we get our eyes on the prize and see everything we couldn't see. There's lots of work to do. We do a retrograde, do a little bit of cleanup. That's okay. But now, as we're moving towards Saturn getting into Aquarius, we've been looking at this. We done it. So now this last little retrograde before he leaves is like, I'm just making sure you got it. That's it. So if you've done the work and we're good, use it. You've earned this level of maturity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Go use it.
You could actually be changing things that needed to be changed, and
Yeah.
finally getting it like, okay, you know, been working on this, finally, like, okay, boom, now we're done and we can finally move on, right?
Yeah. So it's a much more positive, potentially positive
Yeah.
expression of how we move, having developed with the energy we were provided to grow in, I think.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I agree. That opposition with Uranus, I mean, you know, oppositions are really tough.
Yeah.
Even
It
more
takes
than,
forever.
yeah, you know, and it's like, so I don't know, man. I mean, if you've got anything regarding transportation or technology that's sort of sketchy or outdated,
Mhm.
don't wait around for the retrograde to take something that's on its last leg out from and yank that last leg out from under you.
Absolutely. And in Scorpio style, if you are not current with your antivirus, your protection, I mean, the next big war I think we have is
All your backups are in place and all that
yeah,
stuff. You know, come on, man. I
right
mean,
there.
we know it's coming, you know,
Yeah.
and so yeah, because that one could be tough with that, with regards to that, you know. It just reminded me I got to get tires on my truck, you know.
See, the wheels didn't just fall off. That right there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I find in oppositions, they're usually relational anyway. So I'm like, if you truly have not changed that password or put your malware on, right? Mercury and Scorpio is a really nice hacker position, right? Getting into that security.
Mm.
So update, update, update.
Yeah, and that's another good point, you know, if if you feel uncomfortable, you know, call in some protection. Whatever that is for you, you know, if it's you know, there's different people do it different ways, so I'm not going to just necessarily put instructions on that, but
Sure.
call in your protections, and make sure that you know that you got your bases covered proactively and defensively if necessary. I mean, it's not necessarily like full on, you know, like go into hiding. You know, a lot of people go, oh, the retrograde's coming, like hide under the covers for
It's a
3 weeks.
rock.
I'm not saying that, but if you're going into a situation where you don't feel comfortable, you know, protect yourself, whether that be energetically, you know, or spiritually or literally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we've got this retrograde in place leading up to, but stationing at the election.
That's right.
What do you think?
Well, there's a reason that the ancients used 20 years as a Time Lord interval for Mercury, because it takes about 6.5 years for Mercury to, remember how I said this year it's the water signs and next year it's the air signs?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes fire, water, air, earth, and that takes about 6.5 years. And so then you get 13 and then you get 20. So it'll be 3 repetitions through all 4 elements by the time you get to 20 years. And so what happens is after 20 years, you get it's retrograde in the same place, same time of year, same part of the synodic cycle. So essentially, we're looking at a repeat of 2000. Mercury was stationing on election day that year. And we all know, you know, hanging chads and like, you know, classic Mercury retrograde problems, like counting, had to recount and all that stuff. So, you know, what I said at the Great Lakes Conference earlier this year is I see really 2 possibilities. We could have, you know, where, and in 2000, the election day turned out to be like election month, right? Because of all the, and it went to the Supreme Court and all that stuff. That's definitely a possibility. And I'm not talking conspiracy theories, by the way. I'm not accepting or denying any conspiracy theory.
Sure.
But I'm just talking like, you know, stuff can happen. And so that's one possibility, is that it could happen the same way. Another possibility is that we could have what's called a realignment election.
Sure.
Okay. Because, like, for instance, the last really big realignment election was 20 years before that, in 1980, when Ronald Reagan got elected, you know, by a landslide. Which, I mean, I don't want to necessarily get into the personal politics, but that was amazing to me that dude got elected by a landslide. But you know, it was that. Pretty much the last 40 years have been dominated by the Republicans, in terms of, you know, overall seats and all that, right? They've had more 2-term presidents, I think, and all that stuff. So it could be that the realignment shifts the other way, and that this is the election's not even close enough where any kind of issues like recount like 2000 happen, but it's more like 1980, where it's just like the tide is just turned hard the other way. And now that more or less, I mean, nothing is ever pure dominance, but more or less it'll now be dominated by the opposite party. Yeah. And that's a definite possibility, because we talked about, you know, Mercury having bounds dignity in the degree where it stations, right? In Libra, Mercury has triplicity dignity, right? So what that means is triplicities refer to the elements, right? Because there's 3 signs of each element, right? So triplicity dignity is a way of saying the nature of this sign agrees with the nature of the planet. Mercury is an airy planet. It's about communication. It's about air signs agree with the nature. And now Mercury is the triplicity ruler of Libra by night. right? And so in a nocturnal chart, Mercury has triplicity dignity. Saturn rules during the day. Now, do you remember what time Mercury stations?
Eh,
Let me see here.
I know. Let's get the books down.
Let's see. Get all Virgo on this. It's during the daytime. It's at 1 p.m. when it finally stations direct. I think it was later in the day last time. So, I don't know, but see, in politics, or sorry, the old way of thinking about planets is embedded in like sort of political view. In Hellenistic times, they would say that that any given chart has a sect, S-E-C-T. You often hear that word when referring to political organizations. They're sectarian, or they're a sect. They're they're sect. It more means division. They're a division of something else. And so they divided the planets into two sects, two teams, if you will, two parties, whatever you want to call it. You had the diurnal sect, which is Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. And you had the nocturnal sect, which was Moon, Venus, and Mars. Mercury can go either way. Now, if Mercury, now, the nocturnal sect, in a daytime chart, the nocturnal sect would represent the party out of power. So right now, the Republicans rule the White House and the Senate, right? And the Democrats rule the House. So the party out of power is the Democrats. They have less power overall. So in a daytime chart, the nocturnal sect would represent the Democrats. So if Mercury has triplicity dignity in a nighttime chart, it might suggest that the nighttime energy, the party out of power, is actually reversing. There's a reversal in favor of the party out of power. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is that making sense at all?
Yeah, no, totally.
Okay. All right, cool.
I was just thinking too, on the day with the stationing happening, I'm just wondering, I don't actually know what the sign of the Democratic Party is. Do you know?
Yeah, see, I don't, that I have seen people go so many different ways with that. Like, are the Democrats Jupiter and the Republicans Saturn, or is it the other way around? And it's like, I don't know that there's any consensus about that.
Sure. Okay. That's one to think about, though.
It is interesting to think about, but it's like, as soon as I think I got it figured out, somebody else says the reverse, and I'm like,
Sure. Well, and I'm thinking too, if you use the Sibley chart, the moon for the US, it's Aquarian. So yep. I was kind of wondering, how's that working in with this retrograde as well? But if we just don't know the parties, it's defeating my question right now.
Well, no, we can play with it if you want. I'm just saying that, understand that, everybody don't necessarily think like us, is what I'm telling people.
Sure. Sure. I know I watched a presentation actually at ESAR where the Gemini rising was used. And I thought it was really an interesting perspective to use that particular version of the chart.
Yep, there's a Gemini rising one. There's one called Scorpionic America that I think is based on the Articles of Confederation, which is interesting. So there's different viewpoints. But that Aquarian moon, it's interesting, right? Because you think of Aquarius as a progressive kind of sign, right? We like to think of Aquarius as progressive, right? But it's ruled by Saturn, man.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that we as a country are truly progressive in our history?
Well, I think that it is possible to be progressive and in trouble all at the same time.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I do. I mean, I think that we have to look and say, okay, astrology aside, history, there has been movement from what was, right? So
yeah.
I think that we can say I don't know if we're progressive, but we've moved on ish from some things, but you can move forward without actually cleaning up. Like, we have personal lives, you can do that. You can just keep tromping forward. But does that make you progressive? I mean, I think in being progressive, don't you genuinely progress the whole damn thing forward? Like, progressive means the whole thing comes forward. So
Right.
I don't know. I think that it is possible to be I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but progressive and have problems.
No, I hear you. I hear you. And I think that puts
Progressive
it
and
in.
repressed
Yeah,
all
right.
at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, um, with regard to the Sibley chart, you know, Saturn is exalted in Libra in that chart, right? The
Mhm.
July 4, 1776 chart.
Mhm.
And so, and Jupiter's exalted in Cancer though, too. So it's like um,
Yeah.
both of those socio-political planets are very powerfully expressed.
Yeah.
And so it's like, which one is which? Which way are we? Are we this, you know, um, I don't know. I get uncomfortable even talking about it because I honestly don't know myself anymore.
I
To be
know.
honest with
I
you.
know. I do get that. I do get that. Yeah.
Um,
It was a side thought. It's such a hot topic right now. There's just a side thought, and to think, okay, we're gonna have this station in the energy of Libra. We don't really agree what the parties are, but if the Republicans are Libra and the Democrats are Aquarian, but we're stationing in Libra to push forward on a retrograde, which brings us to a repeat. I mean, you could just really like mind F this all
yeah.
afternoon and pray.
Now, what's interesting about what you're saying there is we can talk about um, the relationship of the signs, which is interesting in terms of their diurnal rotation. Right now, Mars is squaring um, Saturn in Capricorn, right? But by the time Mars rises in the evening, remember how you said your husband he saw it? He was like, whoa, there's Mars. But here's the thing, where's Saturn when that Mars is rising? Do you remember?
Where's that one? Always got to be high in the sky.
Way overhead, right? Because as Aries is rising, Capricorn has already reached the midheaven.
Yeah.
So you see Capricorn has the high ground. Capricorn's looking down on Aries as he rises. So the goat has it over on the and let me tell you, as an Aries, that's true. Like Capricorns always think they're the boss of me. And I'm like, man, go on somewhere with that, because like I'm the last person in the world you should be thinking you're gonna be bossing. But
Don't boss me. That is so funny.
but then I realized at one point, Capricorns used to be my least favorite sign because of that. They're always trying to boss me. And then when I realized, well, it is a natural relationship, I was like, okay, I'm dealing with a Capricorn. They're going to be thinking about bossing me. I'm just going to accept that that's part of the dynamic and I'm not going to let it bother me. And now I get along with them fine because I understand, like, well, they are like on the top of the mountain when I'm rising. So, there is that. So Mars and Aries, as strong as it is, it might have to settle a little bit and be like, okay, I'm going to fight, and I'm going to make some progress, but I might not get everything I want. And I'm going to have to say, okay, Capricorn, you get the last word, fine. But as long as we made some progress, all right then.
Mhm.
Whereas when Capricorn is rising, where do we find Mercury? In Libra,
Yeah, on the
right?
other side then.
Yeah. So as Capricorn is rising, Libra has already reached you know, the midheaven, you see. Um, so, um, so there's this sort of, you know, opposite relationship where Mercury has the high ground in Libra. And Mercury might actually be able to say, hey, Saturn, you know, you managed to, like, you know, beat Mars back a little bit there, but I got one last trick for you. Like, you said the rules was this, and you know, if we go exactly by the letter of the law of what you said, you know how kids do, but you said.
What you said. Yes, and Mercury is still the trickster. To find a loophole is not unheard of.
You know, and so, like, is this really the rules? Because if it is, then guess what? You know, oh, now you want to change the rules. Okay, well, we could talk about that too.
Yeah. Oh man, this is just going to be such an interesting time. Like, I think as we get to that, and really up until inauguration for sure, and the whole first year, I think, of whomever's presidency is going to be real interesting. And I'm not so certain that I feel like whoever gets into office stays in office in their first year. So I do feel like we should have a lot of eyes on our vice president charts for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Wow, man. I
All
mean,
the
that's just,
wow.
yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, old guys are old guys, you know, you just don't know. They could have a health problem. They could have, there's no telling.
Sure. Well, and man, this is like coming together in my little head. So if we have that situation with Mars and Saturn coming together, I think that Saturn tells Mars, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not yet. So don't push that progress just yet.
Uh-huh.
I'll show you how we can get there. So really, truly, if we have this situation where whatever happens in this first year of the presidency, we have still progressed, but in a delayed capacity. Either way you go, it's, oh my God, I've got like a whole nother show topic right now.
Wow, the neurons are firing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
they're going. They're super good.
that's
Okay.
awesome. Well,
But
see, I took some what do you call those little mushrooms? Not the psychedelic kind.
you're like, Gary's high.
No, those are for private time. But no, what do you call them? The lion's mane.
Oh yeah, my
I took some lion's mane before we got on because I was like, I want to be, you know, on target and everything. And it seems like maybe you were the one that was taking them because you're like,
no, and I tell you what, my husband loves those, and I can't do it, Gary, because I'm like, I gotta take a nap. Like, they do nothing
really
for my vibe, but his little
interesting.
Aries buzz he's on. I'm like, yes, now I can fully focus on my nap, you know? So
That's interesting. Yeah, different people react. You know, their body chemistry just is different. So
yeah.
all
Well,
good.
to wrap up our retrograde situation, what are some key bullet points we can give people on how to work with it before, during, and after?
Right. So before, what you want to do is you want to, like, pay attention to things that are sort of whispering to you about, pay attention, like something's a little bit off, something feels off or sounds off, and it's not super obvious, right? Because water is below. Water is, you got to look under the surface. So pay attention to those little intuitions. Pay attention to the softer, subtler signs that something's a little off before the retrograde. And think about how the limits or the boundaries or the terms of engagement are or are not working in your favor. And think about, like, okay, you know, like, according to, you know, my lease, it says I can't, you know, work on the sink myself, but when I call the dude, you know, it takes him a week to get here. So maybe I can talk to my landlord about, you know, minor stuff. I'd rather just deal with it myself because I don't want to have to wait a week until dude gets here or whatever, you know. So think about things that you might be able to switch the terms of the agreement more in your favor. and then watch as the stories unfold. And so that when that thing comes up, be like, oh yeah, I was thinking about that, and I already sort of had some ideas. And then now that's not going to be the final word, because it happens in threes, right? It goes forward, backward, forward. But at least you'll have some ideas, and then as you flow with, okay, well, I had some ideas and that isn't quite what is necessary, but making one more adjustment, and then we can get going. And then for the station in Libra, I think really it's about moving ahead, and what's how can I rebalance myself going forward, in a way where, this whole year has just been crazy, right, for a lot of people in a lot of ways. And where's my, Libra, where's my sense of balance, and going forward, because I do think next year is going to be very different. Um, and I think that not necessarily, I mean, I honestly, I'm not trying to get back to normal. I'm not interested in normal. I'm interested in a new normal, maybe, and so really towards station direct, that's going to be like, okay, how can we do this a new way that's sort of balanced and not overly reactive, but is definitely moving things forward, you know, and yeah, and kind of, in a way that makes sense, and air sign, right? Makes sense.
Sure.
Everybody's happy, win-win, all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, and it's like, I think I have just this vision of, when you clean something out of a wound, or you break a bone or something like that, and you have to go deep in for the healing, but then you have to come out and find a new sense of balance. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean, like when you clean your ears out or something like that after you've been sick, and then you're like, oh, I have to refine my orientation to my universe here. I think there's a lot of
Yeah, you've been going around with them ears clogged up, and all of a sudden now you can hear again.
yeah,
Whoa,
absolutely.
I got the volume too high. I gotta
Yeah,
turn it down a
absolutely.
little bit.
Yeah, and we've been pushed into our houses and our lives so much that people consistently keep saying, gosh, I just went out to do a little bit of shopping, and it's like the lights were on too bright. It was just all too much in my senses to take on. So there is, I think, this idea of like we're kind of unclogged a little bit. So we do have to find a new rebalance for
That's wonderful. I love that metaphor, Stormy, because that's actually very much part of the alchemy. Remember how I said there's the blackening, there's the whitening, and there's the reddening, So the first stage is about break it down, like literally break it down. What's wrong, where, how, why, what for, like break it down. Like you said, with Scorpio is so good at that. Break down what's actually going on, figure out, where the problem is, where it isn't, all that good stuff. Break it down. That's the blackening. The nigredo is what they call it. The albedo is like, oh, once I break it down, then I can receive, especially if you've made space for new energy in your life. Like I said, another thing about the blackening is like the giveaway, like make space for something new. That whitening, the albedo, is you get a new idea, you get a flash of inspiration, like what happened for you. You're like, oh, I got an idea for a new show. You're already in the albedo, man. And then the rubido is like, okay, how do I take that new idea? And it's just like you said, with a wound, the first thing is like, it's all got like all that junk all over it and stuff. And you got to clean that off. And then you got to put a bandage over it, right? And then after you clean it off and stuff, it gets kind of, the scab falls off, and it's kind of like the color's not there.
yeah.
And then later the blood starts flowing back in there, and it gets red again. The reddening is literally the blood flowing back into that area and revivifying it. So you get the revivifying of this. And so you figure out, oh, that new idea, oh yeah, I got to do this, that, and the other to make that new idea real. bring it out into the world and to actually move ahead and to revivify my life. And so that's literally like, that's what I recommend to people, that to break it down into those 3 stages and understand wherever you are, you know, and not to say, oh, wow, something broke. Oh, you know, and catastrophize, if that's a word.
Catastrophize.
Catastrophize, yeah. Oh, put woe is me, you know, something broke, it's the end of the, you know, and just, you know, because like, you know, ish happens, right?
Yeah.
And so, but if you realize, oh, okay, this is just the first stage, and then I'm going to find the new idea, the new energy, and then I'm going to go into the red stage. It's a lot more productive, I think, too. It's a lot more balanced as well, because you're recognizing there's different parts and there's different stages. And yeah, so that's exactly how I break it down for people. So your metaphor is like alchemical AF, man.
Chemical AF. And it's neat to consider it too, because whatever comes on the other side, it's like once the wound has happened, once the break has happened, you're not going to be who and what you were before, ever.
That's right. That's right.
That's where all of us are. So it's like, all right, here we go. Yay.
Yeah.
Gary, thanks for coming over again. And
oh yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, well, Mercury, as far as I know, plans to continue retrograding. So we can keep talking about it.
Next year, oh my goodness. I'm so looking forward to next year, because I was born in a year where the retrogrades were in the air signs. So next year is kind of like my home turf. I'm like, yeah, all right. So absolutely, I'm down for more of these conversations. And I think, again, like, you know, sometimes, you know, water can be kind of heavy and emotional and all that. I think air is a little more light-hearted, a little more so. I mean, that right there, the energy is just a little lighter, a little, so it should be more fun. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So all right, sounds good. Well, I'll put you on my calendar for what, February, right? Late January.
Yeah, you can just put me for like all of 2021 and we'll figure it out. You'll be like, well, I don't know, it's 2 months. Let's talk about something.
You're penciled in. I got you down. I'm in there.
Absolutely brilliant. All right, you guys, thank you so much for showing up. Everybody loves your beard, Gary. So
the beard, like the braid?
Yeah.
I've even got a little Norse you know, beard bead on the end of it there. I don't know if you can see that part.
Well, I know that we've had some beard comments, so you're still welcome.
Thank you.
Beard. All right, you guys, we will see you on Friday, where Friday is a busy eat and greet day. We've got a Chutabava in the morning, and then we've got Gemini Brett in the afternoon. So it's a busy eat and greet day, plus the
homeboy.
I know, man, it's going to be a day. It's going to be a day, right? So, all right, guys, we love you. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.